Good evening. Good evening, my friends. Today, I got some good news for you and actually for all mankind, but especially for me, right? And we should all be able to say that, especially for me. At this point right here, Romans 5, I want to talk about God's love. Um, Romans 5 verses, starting in verse 8. But God commends his love towards us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Much more then, being now justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more, being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. And I just want to magnify this. God commends his love towards us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Christ died for us when we were not doing the right thing, when we had rejected him, when we were the enemies of God. Christ died for us while we were in a bad place, not seeking him. He sent Christ. We didn't even know that we needed Christ, but Christ came and he gave himself for us. And now we have hope. But God's love is manifest in this, that while we were sinners, he gave his Son for us. It just blows my mind. It should blow all our minds, what God's done, and how awesome and how gracious and merciful and good he is, and that he didn't give up on us. He was faithful to us. He was faithful to his creation, um, and made a way of reconciliation without the creation even um, being deserving of it or even desiring it. Um, and that's just how loving and good God is. But I also want to focus on this. Verse 10, it says, For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. And in light of God's love for us, when we really understand how that when we were his enemies, he sent Jesus to reconcile us to him, to draw us to him, in hope that some would be spared. Because God's not willing that any would perish, and he doesn't have any delight in the death of any man, but he wants us all to be reconciled to him. But us who believe, you know, and have been reconciled, he's saying, if God reconciled us to himself when we were his enemies, how much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved by his life? It's important to know that we've been reconciled, and there's a temptation when you slip up, when you fall short, whatever, to beat yourself up and to think that you've fallen out of God's grace, or just to be hard on yourself. But we need to understand that while we were God's enemies, he reconciled us. So how much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved? You know what I mean? It's important to understand that now that you've, like, if God spared you when you were his enemy, how much more is he going to spare you now that you've been reconciled to him? If you're trying to do the right thing, your hope should be increased even more, because when you weren't even trying to do the right thing, God had mercy on you. So how much more mercy is he going to have on you when you're trying to do what is right? So know that the Lord loves you. Know that his goodness is there for you, and his mercy and his grace. And know that if just get that point in your mind, if while you were God's enemy and not even trying to do right, God had mercy on you, how much more mercy is he going to have on you now that you believe in his Son, who he gave for you, and are trying to do what is right? Amen.